Hey Helmut, very nice to meet you again.
Hi, Fabian. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you making time for this. Before we delve into today, would you mind giving me a little bit of context to your professional journey, where you come from, what you've been doing?
Yeah, I'm a software engineer. I studied computer science back in the early 90s, so quite some time ago. Funny enough, I was focusing on AI back in those days, and we can definitely talk about how AI looked back in those days and what the differences are to what we see today. So after I've done my computer science degree, I joined Daimler Benz back in the days. They changed their name quite some time over the years, and started in the research area there in the research department, actually doing AI back then. And over the years and over the company changes in many different ways, I worked in different areas in the company, both on the more process, business related side, but then also more on the product related side. And I'm sure there are many touch points we can talk about. Recently, I started my own company, focusing on electrification of vehicles, specifically the charging domain. But let's not jump ahead and do one thing after the other here.
No, fascinating. Thank you. Thank you so much for the overview. To set the scene, what would be quite helpful, and you've worked in automotive for a number of years, and what I've heard a lot throughout these conversations is that while AI seems very hot at the moment and is disruptive, arguably in many ways, it is another innovation that companies adopt in somewhat similar ways as we've seen with a number of technologies. So, from your perspective, what are some of the digitization challenges that you've seen over the past couple of years with the introductions of new technologies across automotive manufacturers?
Yeah, I had the pleasure to experience many changes over the years. I mean, first of all, the introduction of the internet, basically, which was with many industries completely new to some of the industries, also automotive. I think that was a big enabler, but also a big troublemaker for some OEMs in the early days. Um, and of course, what we all observed prior to the AI challenge, if you will, the major change in the automotive industry in terms of software becoming a major part of automotive and the product, the vehicles. Um, Many of the OEMs have been facing challenges with this topic because, as we all know, automotive companies are um, mostly around hardware and sheet metal bending, if you will. Um, and software was always just a byproduct of engineering a car. And with the introduction of the smartphone, I think many of the technologies also in the vehicle um, were threatened by those technologies and the expectations of customers in terms of what software can actually do within a vehicle. Some of the companies were pretty fast in adopting that. Others were rather reluctant and more traditional in making software a piece or a core piece of the product experience.
Mhm. Just just on it, I still remember when I started working in automotive maybe 8 to 9 years ago now, and everyone was setting up these software entities, whether within the OEMs or as entirely separate legal entities. The sort of general narrative was, or the sentiment was, that everyone in the organization is becoming a software engineer of one form or another. Yes, while it's been super disruptive and has been this huge push, and loads of differentiators are linked to software and related digital engineering capabilities. As you alluded to, sort of the bread and butter business of automotive manufacturers still seems to be supply chain orchestration, manufacturing, and so on. With that in mind, and of course we don't have a crystal ball, but how do you think the current AI game could play out in that respect, in both in terms of the scale over the sort of medium to long term, talking about sort of 3 to 5, 6, 7 years, and then also in terms of the organizational setup? Do you think that's something that we will see more and more within functions, or do you think this will be a more centralized capability? What are your views on that?
Before diving into the specific AI piece, I think we need to step back a little and look at software in general within automotive companies. Back in the days, let's say before the 2010, software was part of um, any product already, but what really was different compared to other industries was that there was no clear understanding of what the the advantages and also the the role of software plays within a vehicle. I mean, back in the days, we were talking about things like EE architecture. So basically, the electrical and electronic components within the vehicle. And this was a discussion mainly around power buses, data buses inside the vehicle, ECUs, things that are pretty standard back in those days. And the key issue there was those EE architectures were designed together with the vehicle and a specific generation of vehicle, and was designed to be there for the lifespan of the vehicle. So nothing had to change inside that EE architecture, like with every other part in the vehicle. So if there were new things coming up during the lifespan of a vehicle, be it bugs that need to be fixed or possibly new functions, it was very difficult for the OEMs to really make that happen in an already produced and sold car, because there was no way to update the software. And if you want to update the software, it was basically replacing a part with a newer part with an updated software version. So everything was dealt as a part with a parts number, and there were no software development processes involved in that management of the software, because most of the software was developed and provided by suppliers. So even the OEMs didn't have a clue what was running on an ECU, and how would you change that ECU, add new features, or fix bugs in that ECU. So you had to actually contact your supplier, try to get a bug fix, and then with recalls, basically get the vehicles into the workshop, replace that part, or do an update if you could. And then you've solved the issue. But as we know, this is no longer acceptable in these days, because people expect some things need to be fixed over the air. Some things need to evolve over the lifespan of the vehicle with new updated features. And when we look specifically in electric vehicles, there is a a crucial requirement that you are able to update things like battery management and those kind of things on the fly, because over the lifespan of the vehicle, there are new developments, new things you find out about your battery, which need to be adjusted. So from a development process point of view, software was not something that was baked into the development process, but really something that comes with a piece of hardware, be it the ECU or other components that will finally end up in the vehicle.
On that point, because this is something that we hear a lot at conferences and sort of general industry conversations, where and this was what everyone said when sort of Tesla launched their own very centralized ECU architecture, that they are so far ahead from their competitors, that this gives them the real competitive advantage when it comes to over-the-air updates. And then everyone sort of started transitioning their legacy architectures to fewer and fewer ECUs. As far as my understanding goes, I don't know too much about the domain, but it's still sort of quite a long journey by the looks of it for some of the manufacturers to centralize this architecturally. Where are automotive OEMs across the spectrum, both in terms of new EV entrants, but then also incumbents on this journey of centralizing ECUs, given that this seems to be so critical for SDV and then over-the-air updates and etc. And then also, some respects, as I understand, at least ADAS capability, and then also compared to some of the newer manufacturers without the legacy.
Yeah, it's actually you have to separate marketing speak and engineering speak, because of course things like over-the-air updates you hear a lot these days from many different OEMs, and yeah, in reality there are capabilities in some of the vehicles that are already out there that are updatable over the air, but typically for the majority of OEMs, those are very high level features that you could update either in the infotainment system or things like maps used in the vehicle. A real end-to-end software update capability. Tesla was actually the first one to do that, really end-to-end. And most of the OEMs, they only partially enabled those capabilities over the last couple of years. So what we see, and I think everybody listening to that podcast heard about the challenges and the issues that some of the companies had in the past years. Let's name Volkswagen with CARIAD. Just recently, Ford with their FNV4 architecture they were trying to develop. They struggled quite a bit in terms of introducing this full-fledged modern architecture that just not covers EE aspects, but really software as a unified architecture within the vehicle. And what we've observed is that in that process, companies have reached a certain level of software capabilities inside the vehicles. But as to my knowledge, only a few companies have really went to the extent that they really are thinking software from the ground up. And the majority is still in that hybrid mode, where some things are really software enabled, fully software enabled, but most of the components are still following the old architecture. And just to name a couple of examples, I think Mercedes finally, with their MB.OS approach and with the latest introduction of NVIDIA hardware, like with the new CLA that was just released, they actually have introduced an end-to-end architecture with that model. BMW is also quite far with that approach, but not knowing all the details, I'm still questioning if they have reached the same level of integration that like Tesla has implemented since 2012, to be honest, with their Model S back in those days. So still a way to go. But what we can see is that finally, I think most of the OEMs, and I'm talking roughly about the premium OEMs, they have, um, understood the challenge and are heavily investing in getting those unified architectures into the vehicle.
Is it just a and on that last point, I was sort of wondering
Mhm.
while you were speaking what incumbents could do differently, because it seems to be a recurring story, not just within the realm of digital architectures, but also in other areas of the business. And you just alluded to that at the end. That's okay, in some respects, an investment question where they potentially had big ambitions but didn't fund them sufficiently. What do you think could or should incumbents do differently to avoid some of these challenges that we've seen in the media?
Well, mainly, and I mean, you can always observe that only from the outside to a certain extent. In some areas, I was part of that transition, but with many things, and not just the software piece, but also with electrification, you have, of course, an organization, and I'm focusing in this regard mainly on the big German OEMs. They were for centuries focused on optimizing the engineering and manufacturing of vehicles to the extent that they try to improve quality, performance of the vehicle, and really also spit out um, a range of different models within a short number of time in order to, yeah, have products in every niche of the market. And this was actually the strength and the advantage of those companies to iterate very fast on those things. But as we talked about it, it was mainly on the hardware and the traditional um, um, attributes of vehicle, like the driving style, the powertrain, gearboxes, things that were really traditional. So if you have built up an organization that is really managing those incremental innovations, it's very difficult to adopt breakthroughs like a change of the powertrain from a combustion engine into an electric vehicle, but also on the software side, introducing those capabilities into a development process that was fully focused on totally different areas. So what the companies are facing is, first of all, how do you deal with innovations like that? Is it something you bake into the traditional process, um, trying to change the whole company basically from within? And secondly, I mean, you are missing a certain skill set, specifically in the software area, where you really need to think differently in terms of not model years, but really software versions, incremental versions that need to be updated on the vehicle, let's say on a monthly basis. I mean, Tesla is releasing new software versions almost every other week, while other OEMs are doing that every 6 months. So you need a completely different organization of your process, your change processes, in order to cope with those changes. And those are the things that really need to be untrained for certain roles in development organization that really adopt those new models in order to facilitate those kind of changes in a very fast cadence and speed. And it takes probably one or two generations of engineers to actually change that behavior and really rework the whole organization to that new development paradigm, I would say.
Mm. On that last point, do you believe that some of the competitors from Asia, specifically companies like, I mean, aren't really companies like BYD and somewhat similar organizations, do you believe that they have a head start in these areas, and what do you think that could mean in terms of market penetration slash global rollout for them and also for the incumbents?
Yeah, I think this was actually the case in with Tesla. I mean, not coming from a traditional development organization, you can basically, yeah, you have an unfair advantage. You don't have the legacy of the traditional cars and the traditional way of working, and you basically have a fresh start. You build your organization, and also your your skill sets based on what's coming and not what has been done in the past. So there's a lot of baggage you don't have to carry over into the new world, and this is obviously an advantage for every newcomer in that industry, and which makes it so difficult for the incumbents to adjust their way of working towards those new technologies and capabilities you need to have. So yes, this is an advantage, but what we can observe, and this is probably the the good side of things for the traditional OEMs, there is nothing that prevents you from changing this towards that new metaphor or new way of working. Um, but it takes time, and it takes a great will and also management capabilities to make that change happen inside the organization. So only time will tell if they can keep up with their new competitors. The good thing is, specifically China, the new companies there, there's going to be a consolidation in that area as well. I mean, you have literally hundreds of companies in China. Some of them we don't even know here in Europe, and most of them will be gone in a couple of years. But on the other side, you mentioned BYD, and there are others as well. They definitely will sustain, and they will grab a huge portion of the market, starting in China, but also then coming to Europe and North America with their products. And this is a tough competition for all the incumbents in those established markets. So the race is not over yet, but it's in full swing, and yeah, we will observe that in real time if they can capture that market, or if the incumbents can really fight back and compete on a product level.
Mhm. Yeah, speaking of observing in real time, I've noticed three of my sort of somewhat indirect neighbors here. They replaced their Teslas with BYD vehicles. For context, I live in a fairly sort of historic, old-fashioned British town, so it's a sign that they're beginning to capture possibly quite significant market share. But yeah, when we started the conversation, you mentioned that when you started to become a software engineer, that you already did AI work? Nowadays, when we speak about AI, we often refer to Gen AI and related capabilities, and not so much to sort of more basic machine learning models. What is your 10,000 feet perspective on how Gen AI specifically is currently impacting automotive manufacturers, and what are some of the interesting and real value driving use cases that you've seen so far?
Good question. I mean, Gen AI and I think the things we are observing in our daily work has, of course, two aspects. There are process related issues or topics um, in your daily work, how you actually do your work as an engineer, not just as a software engineer, but in general. That could be um, also an accountant that is working in some area within the company. We see those tools, of course, um, yeah, creeping into the companies in every aspect of the business. So I'm pretty sure that most of the companies have meanwhile established their own AI for business related tasks, being afraid of releasing data or their proprietary data into public available LLMs and those kind of things. I mean, this is something that that is happening on every level. That everyone is building their own AI inside the company with support of companies, of course. Um, on the software, on the product side, I mean, there are obvious use cases like replacing voice to text and text to voice capabilities inside the vehicle with those new technologies, and specifically the assistance of those services inside the vehicle. Everyone is introducing now a ChatGPT like capability inside their infotainment system. Obviously, this is one way of interacting with your vehicle, and it has been a way of interacting with your vehicle in the past, but now on a very different level. So it's no longer you try to understand how your infotainment system works, but really the infotainment system um, um, is personalized with your specific wishes and way of asking for things. I think this is a development we're going to see everywhere, not just in the automotive business. Um, but I mean, AI in general is also taking place in other areas which are obviously not directly customer facing. Talking about autonomous driving, I mean, we see a major change there from the early days of autonomous features into fully networked units that no longer work in a traditional stack-based or classic autonomous driving capability. I think this is something which is even more groundbreaking. But yeah, a proliferation of those capabilities, I think, is taking place inside the vehicle on many levels.
One sort of last follow-up question to that. How disruptive do you think this is? So to two parts to our question. First of all, how disruptive do you think on sort of an enterprise-wide level do you think AI more widely will be in terms of both headcount and then types of roles, and then link to that, where do you think Gen AI or AI capability more widely should sit within the organization? Is it something that's embedded within every single function, or do you think there should be a potentially board member? I don't think I haven't seen any AI board members yet. Do you think that will be part of the CTO agenda? Where do you think that should sit organizationally?
I mean, it's what you could see, and also in previous times, you've seen dedicated units trying to deal with new innovation and trying to facilitate the introduction of those innovations inside the organization. There are pros and cons with those approaches, and I think in back in the old days, if you will, there was most definitely a higher need for those specialized domain managers to facilitate digitization inside the company. I don't think this is something moving forward I would justify as a role inside the company due to one major reason. First of all, I think your workforce ultimately is more proficient with these new technologies to begin with. I mean, everyone is experiencing what tools like ChatGPT or some of the others, Gemini, you name it, can do. And people are actually experiencing that in their private life as well. And the other aspect is um, digitization as a domain only works if it is baked into the organization as a way of looking onto your challenges you have on a daily basis. I mean, everything that can be digitized will be digitized in the future. So you don't have to have an effort that tries to, like a project, address every process and then build a project plan and set objectives, and then you transform your business. You actually need to think digital in your daily business, and everything that helps you in doing your business, you use as a tool. And ultimately, no matter what the business is it automotive, is it any other business, what you are doing is you are trying to use and leverage resources that can help you find information, optimize, accelerate decision making one way or the other. And whatever benefits in that area is going to leverage when you are in charge of your process. That happened during the days when the internet became a resource, and this happens now with AI as well. And if you need to organize that in an organization, I think you have a much bigger problem to begin with your organization, because it just tells you your organization is not able to optimize and become more efficient on a daily basis, which should be the case for any excellent organization, I would say.
Mhm. No, super. Could definitely relate to lots of the points you mentioned there. That I also believe we're currently sort of across the automotive industry, and I've heard this from a number of people I've spoken to on this podcast as well. This element of change management and upskilling is not so much about hiring a consulting company to run a sort of project for a week or two to identify some use cases, but it's much more about sort of this continuous integration and showing and telling what it could do. Um, as a sort of final section of our conversation, let's talk about your own organization. What do you do? What do you offer? What was the rationale behind starting 800 Volt?
Yeah, I think Um, working at a large business for more than 20 years um, is enlightening on the one side, but is also can be also frustrating in terms of yeah, making your own decisions and also be an entrepreneur inside a company. I mean, within Daimler, I had the opportunity, and we didn't talk about that, but just to quickly touch on that, I had the chance with other folks to implement mobility service inside Daimler back in the days. Car to Go it was called, and for me it was eye opening in a sense that I was able from one day to the other to actually um, work in a smaller organization without the restrictions you had in the large organization. So a corporate startup, if you will, inside Daimler back in those days. And I think that changed my attitude towards how I'm going to do business moving forward quite a bit. To some extent, I think I was at a point, um, 2017, when I figured, okay, for me, working in a large organization is no longer something I would like to do for the rest of my career. I changed Daimler back then. A 3-year tenure at Here Technologies, where I did some interesting stuff as well. But ultimately, I decided to found my own company with two other folks. And why 800 volt? Basically, what we are doing there is focusing on the charging use case when it comes to electric vehicles. Um, what is the challenge there? Um, Charging as such is not something you need to reinvent in terms of plugging your car into a charger and charge your vehicle as fast as possible. I mean, this is something the OEMs have solved on the vehicle side, and there is charging technology available, be it slow AC charging or high performance charging with yeah, the high power chargers. What really is becoming a challenge moving forward is how can we, as an industry, satisfy the different charging use cases that customers are confronted with in their daily life. So um, ultimately, for EVs to become successful, you need to enable customers to charge everywhere, literally everywhere. Whenever your car is parked, be it at home, be it at work, um, while shopping, while doing something in a location for a longer time, you in the future expect a charging outlet um, near to your destination. And this requires really to um, build solutions that allow charging your vehicle um, as easy as possible. This is number one. Number two, and this is the much broader picture, is the whole transition towards renewable energy. As we all know, um, we we need to get out of burning stuff and really need to um, yeah, collect energy by solar, by wind, all kinds of different ways of generating energy. And as we see with a growing renewable energy generation, we see a lot of issues with our power distribution, with our power networks. the transmission networks, the distribution networks, they are not designed and not fitting to those changes. So what we need to do in order to um, yeah use renewable energy and use renewable energy to the max is retrofitting our power networks with storage devices that can buffer storage during the night, but also consume energy locally, decentralized, instead of generating energy centralized and distributing it over the network to the consumption. And this requires software that basically manages that kind of charging. And the buzzword there is smart charging. So basically, charge your car or use electricity whenever there is an abundance of electricity, and storage electricity when there is a surplus, but you probably don't want to use that energy at that very moment in time. So our networks need to be more intelligent, and also our charging devices need to be more intelligent. And this is what we are tackling with 800 volt to make charging available everywhere and make it smart, basically.
Mhm. And how do you provide that app? Just as a final follow-up question, is this a white label one, or do you offer this as your own app?
Well, it's a SaaS product. It's not an app per se. I mean, you use an app obviously to charge, but it's really a software that runs in the cloud that manages the chargers and basically um, decides on a case by case basis how you charge and from which energy sources you charge. So it's something like an IoT solution that manages all the chargers and has the intelligence to actually make that as easy as possible without the customer not being aware of what to do in a specific moment. So this is, I think, the beauty of that solution. You just plug in, and then the system decides what to do with your car at a very moment.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks so much, Helmut. As final question, is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask? Are there any final thoughts you want to leave me with?
Well, I think the time we are living in right now is super interesting, and I think what I would leave as a message. I think everyone thinks or that thinks that this is the end game. I would say in terms of who is winning and who is losing in that market. This is not yet the end game. We are at a crucial moment, but I'm pretty sure that the traditional car makers understood the challenge, and they know what's at play. So I'm looking really forward to see what's coming down the road in terms of vehicles, in terms of services, in terms of um, everything around the AI piece we talked about that finally ends up in the car and driving in the future. So very exciting times, and if you can work in that area, lucky you.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and insights today. It was so much fun, and learned a lot from you. So really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Was my pleasure.